My wife was holding a hammer in one hand and my manhood in another. Hi, my name is Bill, and you're about to hear a true story that is so shocking it's sure to change the way you think about your penis forever. Frankly, I'm terrified to share it with you because, honestly, it's the most horrific and humiliating thing I have ever experienced. Regretfully, the exact same thing could easily happen to you. And that's why I'm going to reveal what I did when erectile dysfunction nearly destroyed everything I ever loved in my life. I've decided to come forward and tell my story because, during this dark and awful chapter, I was able to uncover the truth about ED that no one else is giving you. Factual, science-based information that is fully documented by major research institutions around the world that proves ED has nothing to do with low testosterone, age, or anything else that is, quote-unquote, wrong with you. If you think testosterone supplements, shots, or low-T therapies are the answer, it's time for me to pull back the curtain and expose what's really going on. Because, in this short presentation, you're going to learn how I permanently erased my ED in a few short hours without 1. Taking any male enhancement pills. 2. Spending a dime on drugs like Viagra, Cialis, or Levitra, which only partially treat the symptoms and often do more harm than good. 3. Coughing up in excess of $2,000 on low-T therapies that only work in less than 5% of men. The result? I was able to turn back the clock and blast off with on-demand, long-lasting, and rock-hard erections that gave my wife more unadulterated pleasure than she's felt in years. I'm talking about those kind of almost too big but every girl loves them erections that you had when you were a teenager. Remember those? Well, if you follow the technique I discovered, you can experience these same results starting as soon as today. And it doesn't matter how old you are, how long you've been struggling with erection issues, or even if you don't have a problem but are just looking for a little more oomph in your sex life. And, yes, if you're skeptical, I totally get it. I would be too. Indeed, before I dug out the truth, I believed just like everybody else I had to hang my head in shame. Buy those little blue pills and hope and pray they really worked and that I would finally win in the bedroom again. The reality is the only folks who are winning are companies like Pfizer, Bayer, and Sanofi, the big pharma giants, and the billions they make profiting from our shame. So, if you want to change all that, just listen to what I have to say. If you have 5 minutes, I'll explain the simple science behind my discovery and show you how to address your own ED issues with a simple yet proven technique. It's a way to finally get your sex life back on your own terms. And that's precisely what more than 48,742 men have already experienced. Men like Kevin Saunders from Atlanta, Georgia, who was skeptical at first, but, well, listen to what he has to say and you'll see what I mean. I watched your video and heard about your completely all-natural way of getting an erection whenever I wanted to, without any annoying pills, and it seemed like a fantasy to me. I could actually cure my ED simply by using some items I could get at my local store? I had to ask myself, why hadn't I heard about this before? I decided to give in and go for it. I was simply fed up of spending $8 for every pill that didn't fix the problem long term. My love life had been suffering because of this decision and I was losing all hope. I thought to myself, what have I got to lose? And went for it. I gave your method a try and can honestly say that within 48 hours I was getting the best erections of my life. It's hard to believe, but the feeling was incredible. Now let's just say my love life is the best it's been in years, and I can make my wife happy several times a day. Thanks, Bill. I can't believe I didn't discover this earlier. And Kenneth Danielson from Minneapolis, Minnesota, who shared, before coming across your website, my life was miserable. My sex life with my wife was non-existent. My biggest issue was that I already had a medical condition that meant I could not take ED pills. So I was pretty limited on options. I tried a few wonder extracts that didn't help my problem at all. They just contained chemicals that really did more harm than good for my body. Your natural method for curing ED really does work, and I can't thank you enough. It's set out in a way that I could easily follow, and the results speak for themselves. Let's say that non-existent sex life is completely the opposite now. My marriage is the best it's been in years. Thank you, Bill. All the best. And Jason Wallace from Boise, Idaho, who wrote to say, I split up with my wife about 6 months ago, and the idea of being intimate with a woman who wasn't my ex was pretty scary, to say the least. I dated several women and sadly could not perform when it came to the big moment. Nerves and anxiety got the better of me. Each time it happened, it got worse, as it made me think it would happen the next time I had the opportunity to be with a woman, and it just got worse and worse. I was truly shocked when I watched your video and discovered that there really was a simple way to guarantee that my equipment would be ready to perform, even if I was nervous or afraid at that moment. I read your guide and started doing exactly what you said to do, and sure enough, I had absolutely no trouble with getting it up. You stuck by your word. I'm so relieved that I can date women again now without the worry of this happening. No matter the circumstance, I know I'll be able to perform by following your method. I can enjoy sex now and have fun again, which is what life is all about. Thanks for your help, Bill. That's just a handful of the nearly 50,000 men who have already used what I expose in this brief presentation to completely eliminate ED forever. They are enjoying more, better, longer, and stronger sex than ever before, and now you can too. In fact, you can start to get results in just a few short hours from right now. So I'm sure you want to get directly to the good stuff, right? Well, to understand why my discovery works so well and why nobody else is telling you about it, it's important for you to know a little bit about me and my story. As I mentioned, my name is Bill Crane. I'm 52 years old, and I currently live in Lincoln, Nebraska. It was nearly 4 years ago to the day that my wife, Sarah, lifted that hammer above my manhood. As you might imagine, it was totally unexpected, especially since it happened on her 50th birthday. I had known that turning the big 50 was hard for Sarah, but I had no idea what was really going on inside her head. I thought it was just the typical getting older stuff. Buying her really nice jewelry had always worked in the past, so I saved up to score her a brilliant diamond bracelet. She'd been eyeing it for months, so I was sure it was going to do the trick. Boy, was I wrong. I planned to take her to a nice dinner on her birthday and give her the bracelet for dessert. However, it was a slow day at work, so I decided to come home early and surprise her. Little did I know, it was going to be me who was the recipient of the biggest and most painful surprise of the day. Of my life, actually. I wanted to make the most of the surprise, so I parked in front of the neighbor's house and snuck in through the back door. In one hand, I had the bracelet all wrapped up. In the other, I had a big bouquet of her favorite flowers. I was pretty proud of myself. This was going to be a great birthday after all, I thought. As I tiptoed through the kitchen, I heard her talking in the other room. I peered around the corner and realized she wasn't just talking, she was crying. And hard. She was sitting on the sofa with her friend Jean, who had her arms around her, comforting her. And that's when it happened. She cut me to the core. So deeply, and all in a flash. Yes, I love him, she explained to Jean. He's a good man, and we've been married for almost 30 years now. But if I'm being really honest, I just miss sex. I mean, I really, really miss it. More than that, I miss having a real man. I feel terrible for saying it, but it's true. As I was sinking to my knees in horror, she continued, he just can't, do what he used to do anymore, if you know what I mean. He was the first man to ever give me real pleasure. Now it's almost as if he doesn't even know I'm a woman anymore. It makes me feel so unattractive. Will I have to go unsatisfied for the rest of my life? I felt like I was going to be sick when she struck the final blow. I'm embarrassed to admit it, but when I'm out, I get hit on all the time by other guys and I really like it. And when I'm alone, I find myself thinking about these other men and what it would be like to spend the night with them. I'm not sure that I'd actually do it for real, but it's very tempting. That's when it felt like she had a hammer in her hand and smashed it down on my groin. My heart hit the floor with a painful thud. Those few seconds felt like an eternity, and that pain seemed to become more unbearable with every word she spoke. I'm not sure how I got out of the house or how I ended up in the parking lot in front of Starbucks, but there I was. I was sickened. I was horrified. I was angry. I don't know if anyone has ever challenged your manhood, but when your wife of nearly 3 decades says you're not a real man, when she pictures being with other men, there's no lower or worse feeling. Like you've let down the only person who matters in life. That you are a disappointment. That you can't even satisfy your own wife. I thought I was going to be physically sick right there in the car. Problem was, she was right. If I was being really honest, my fear of being able to get an erection, not to mention regular and fully hard ones, and to keep them up, had totally killed our sex life. Sure, we slept in the same bed, but since it was becoming more and more difficult to get hard, I had pretty much given up. And while the ED pills my doctor prescribed seemed to work at first, there were just too many side effects. And it wasn't just the cramps, headaches, diarrhea, or chest pain. At nearly $8 a pop, I was spending hundreds just to get hit-or-miss results. And if you've had to do it, you know that there's nothing more humiliating as a man than trying to have to stand in the pharmacy line to get pills because you can't get it up anymore. Talk about not feeling like a real man. It was awful. But it was also a catch-22. If I didn't use the pills, I was almost sure I wasn't going to have an erection. Even when I did, the results were not guaranteed. On more than a few occasions, I initiated sex and then had to roll over totally ashamed because I was as limp as a wet spaghetti noodle and I couldn't please my own wife. It was a train wreck. And it was one of those things that you just don't talk about either, which only made it 10 times worse. It's important for you to know that, just like my wife had said to her friend, I used to be able to get big, hard, and lasting erections whenever I wanted. But for the last few years, I've never had any problems like this. I guess I took that as a sign of my manhood. It wasn't uncommon for me to have sex daily, or even multiple times a day, and be able to please my partner over and over again. To lose that, well, it hurts. And deep. And that's how I'd gotten myself in this mess, and how I ended up sitting in front of Starbucks thinking about my life. How did this all happen? What was wrong with me? Why did this have to be so difficult? Wasn't this all just a result of aging? If so, getting older was going to suck. Truth is, I had no idea. But what I did know was that I couldn't live knowing my wife didn't think of me as a real man. Whether it was humiliation, pride, or just love for my wife, I decided right then and there to do everything I could to regain my manhood, to wipe out my erectile dysfunction, and to put an end to this ugly chapter of my life. And heck, I loved sex just as much as the next guy. So I was determined to figure out what these traditional prescriptions for ED were really doing. And, more importantly, see if I could find any other solutions that could work without all the side effects and high costs. Over the next month, I spent almost every evening in my home office. For hours and hours, I poured through the internet searching for an answer. Any answer I could find. Did locking myself in the office help our relationship? Nope, not at all. In fact, it made things worse than they already were. I think she was afraid I was having an online affair or was avoiding her or, well, who knows. All I do know is that I tried to do what I could to let her know I loved her. See, I was obsessed. I'd convinced myself that finding a cure, something natural, something I was overlooking, something that just had to be there, was going to make this difficult time totally worth it. If I could just find a way to end my ED, everything would be okay. That's what I was telling myself, because it doesn't matter how young or old you are. If you don't have a healthy sex life with your partner, you risk everything. Because, without it, you're nothing more than platonic roommates, right? I needed Sarah to know she turned me on as much today as she did 30 years ago. And that's why I just had to figure this out. As you can imagine, I ran into lots of roadblocks and obstacles. At the same time, I uncovered some shocking information. What kind of information? Well, for starters, it turns out that those low-T erectile dysfunction therapies you hear about all the time on TV and in the magazines actually only work on about 5% of men. Doctors at Columbia and other respected universities have shown that not only do low-T treatments not benefit the majority of men, but these injections, creams, and gels that can cost up to $2,000 are being connected with fun things like heart attacks, blood clots, liver problems, and even prostate cancer. It's no wonder the FDA is seriously considering outlawing them. Some cure, huh? And, even though I'd already tried those little blue pills, I wanted to really understand how meds like Viagra, Cialis, and Levitra actually worked. I knew they were incredibly expensive, but it was what I discovered when I dug in a little deeper that horrified me. I thought I had it bad with my relatively minor side effects, but I was shocked beyond words when I learned that these drugs may also cause memory problems, sudden hearing or vision loss, and even irregular heartbeat and chest pains. Believe it or not, that's only a small sample of the potentially disastrous side effects. So, here I was,